Imagine navigating a world where survival wasn't just a challenge, but rather a pretty relentless test of wits against well-equipped predators and unforgiving environment. Our early ancestors, the Australopithecus, didn't have to imagine all this, as every step they took on ancient African soil meant the potential encounters with beasts like lion-sized otters, saber-toothed cats, and bone-crushing hyenas. These weren't just passing threats, these were apex predators competing for the same resources as our hominin brethren. How did our ancestors adapt and evolve in the face of such terrifying odds? Between 4 and 2 million years ago, these prehistoric forebears roamed the planet. This epoch is referred to as the Pliocene to early Pleistocene. Their fossils, which have mostly been found in eastern and southern Africa, provide important information about the evolutionary processes that ultimately resulted in modern humans. Australopithecus is best known for its bipedalism. This is a defining characteristic that separates it from earlier, more ape-like ancestors. The skeletal structure of Australopithecines included a human-like pelvis and leg bones. These features indicated that they were well adapted to walking on 2 legs, though not as efficiently as we do today. Their body size was relatively small, with males standing around 4.5 to 5 feet tall. The females were even shorter, as they measured between 3.5 to 4 feet. Brain size was modest by modern standards, ranging from 400 to 500 cubic centimeters. Facial features were also pretty distinct, as they had a projecting face, flat nose, and a pronounced brow ridge. The fossil remains suggest that they also had some very strong jaws. This indicates that their diet included hard food or food with lots of fiber. The most well-known of this genus is probably the Australopithecus afarensis. The skeleton of Lucy that was found in Ethiopia belonged to this genus, who lived between 3.9 to 2.9 million years ago. Then there were the Australopithecus africanus that lived in South Africa between 3 and 2 million years ago. This type had a slightly larger brain, and it's also possible that they may have used simple tools as well. Australopithecus anamensis is another notable species that can be found in Ethiopia and Kenya. Australopithecus sediba is a more recent discovery though, and it's estimated to have lived approximately 2 million years ago. Australopithecines most likely had an omnivorous diet consisting of fruits, nuts, seeds, roots. Besides that, they could also have preyed on small animals such as birds or rodents. According to an analysis of their jaws and teeth, they were able to survive a variety of environments. Their social behavior is less clear, but researchers believe that it's likely the Australopithecines lived in small, family-like groups, just like modern primates. They would have relied on both trees and the ground for safety and sustenance. Their habitats varied from woodlands to savannas to more open areas, which showed how adaptable they were. These ancestors had primitive traits, such as a small brain and adaptations for climbing, but at the same time, they had more advanced traits like bipedalism and smaller canines. This is a clear highlight of the complexity of human evolution. These early hominins set the stage for the rise of Homo, leading to species with larger brains and a greater capacity for tool use. But our ancestors shared their habitats with a variety of different creatures. Among these hominins, a surprising and formidable predator stalked the land. And this may come as a surprise, but you can imagine a gigantic otter to fill the blanks. This otter was known as Enhydriodon homoensis. It shared the region with early bipedal hominins, giving us a unique look into the ecosystem where human evolution unfolded. Enhydriodon homoensis was a giant compared to today's otters, weighing in at over 200 kilograms. This is almost the size of a modern lion. Unlike the small, sleek otters of our time, they are adapted for life in water. This prehistoric otter was a dominant land-based predator. Its presence in the same environment as Australopithecus raises intriguing questions about the interactions and challenges faced by our ancient relatives. Living alongside Australopithecus afarensis, including the famous Lucy and other early hominins, this giant otter shared the African landscape during a crucial period of evolutionary development. This extraordinary otter differed from its modern descendants, not just in size, but also in behavior and diet. According to fossil evidence found in its teeth, E. homoensis hunted or scavenged for territorial prey for the majority of its life. Its diet was surprisingly similar to that of land-based carnivores, according to the isotopic analysis of its tooth enamel. It demonstrates that they consumed a wide range of creatures from the wooded and savanna areas. This territorial lifestyle set it apart from other members of the Enhydriodon genus. which were thought to have semi-aquatic habits, preying on mollusks, fish, and small aquatic animals. The simultaneous presence of Australopithecus and E. homoensis highlights a diverse and competitive ecosystem. Australopithecus, with its bipedal gait and evolving intelligence, was adapting to the challenges of this environment, from foraging for plants to possibly using simple tools for survival. Meanwhile, E. homoensis would have been a formidable competitor, preying on both territorial and aquatic animals. This giant otter's coexistence with early hominins suggests a landscape teeming with competition, where both predator and prey needed to adapt to survive. Australopithecus would encounter even more creatures of the era as they roamed the forests, savannas, and woodlands of ancient Africa. With a wide variety of animals, their world was a dynamic and perilous environment that vividly depicted the early Pliocene and Pleistocene. Each step Australopithecus took could lead them into encounters with creatures now long extinct, whose presence shaped the way early hominins lived and evolved. These animals ranged from being fearsome to relatively friendly, and were as much part of the story of human evolution as Australopithecus themselves. One of the most dangerous predators of this time period was the Dinophilis. This animal weighed between 200 and 300 pounds and stood about 2.5 feet at the shoulder. This big cat is frequently referred to as the false saber-toothed cat. Dinophilis' canine teeth were shorter than those of a saber-toothed cat, but they were still incredibly strong and thick. The predator used these teeth to crush the necks of its prey. Australopithecus, standing around 4 feet tall, would have been dwarfed by this predator, and their interactions with Dinophilis likely revolved around evasion and survival. Dinophilis was a versatile hunter, preying on herbivores like antelope ancestors, juvenile megafauna, and potentially even Australopithecus themselves if desperate. Its ambush strategy is thought to have involved lying in wait within the dense underbush or using the cover of trees, relying on a burst of speed to overtake its target. Much like the big cats of today, our ancestors had to become acutely aware of their surroundings because even the slightest change in their environments could spell the difference between life and death if failed to recognize it. The giant hyena, known as Pachycrocuta bravurostris, was another predator that coexisted with Australopithecus in Africa. This species was the largest hyena ever to live, as it stood at almost 3 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed more than 250 pounds. Pachycrocuta was a specialized scavenger with a short snout full of strong muscles and a stocky build. The harsh conditions of the Pliocene could support these animals. It could crush bones with its impressive bite force, which allowed it to eat nutrient-rich marrow that other predators couldn't get to, and critically wound its prey. Pachycrocuta likely trailed other predators, like Dinophilis or large cats, waiting for the opportunity to snatch a meal from the remains of a kill. This bone-crushing beast would have been a source of both competition and danger for Australopithecus, who must have relied on scavenging for protein-rich meat to supplement their plant-based diet. An encounter with a Pachycrocuta would have been a tense standoff, with early hominins needing to back away slowly from the scavenger's claim. The roars and cackles of these giant hyenas could have echoed through the grasslands, signaling to Australopithecus that a fresh kill was nearby, and also that danger was imminent. Not all encounters in the African landscape were with predators though. An ancestor of the modern elephants existed at the time, which was the straight-tusked elephant, Palaeoloxodon. These animals had long, straight tusks that could reach a length of more than 10 feet, and their shoulder length could be around 13 feet. These elephants grazed on grasses, leaves, bark, and other vegetation while roaming in herds. With the exception of the occasional ambush by a group of large carnivores, they had few predators to be afraid of due to their sheer size. An unwary onlooker could be easily trampled by a charging elephant protecting its young or responding to perceived threats, and it's obvious that this must have been the case back then as well. As the herds followed the seasonal rains and the emergence of new vegetation, the herbivores' slow and steady movements served as a reminder of the prehistoric cycles of life. In the shadowy depths of Africa's forested regions, another predator ruled. The smaller but deadly Homotherium was built for ambush, with strong limbs and retractable claws perfect for climbing and holding on to its prey. Its most distinctive features were its elongated, flattened canines. While shorter than the saber teeth of later cats, these canines were just as effective for slicing through flesh. Australopithecus often ventured into these dense areas, seeking fruits, nuts, and other resources among the trees. However, every step was a gamble, as Homotherium's stealth and climbing ability made it a master of surprise. A rustling in the undergrowth could trigger a flight response, as early hominins quickly learned to differentiate between harmless forest noises and the silent stalking of a predator. Then there were the ancestors of bovines today. The Macapania is an extinct genus of large caprid, or ovibovine, that lived during the Pliocene and Pleistocene epochs in southern and east Africa. It is notable for its laterally positioned horns, a feature reminiscent of modern musk oxen and tachyons. Weighing approximately 263 kilograms, Macapania was likely both a browser and a grazer, preferring grasses and likely relying on a nearby permanent water source. Fossils of Macapania have been found in various regions, shedding light on the fauna that roamed Africa during this period. These grazers would also have diverse encounters with our hominin ancestors, but at this point, it is unlikely that they would be a source of food for the Australopithecus. In this diverse and challenging world, Australopithecus was not merely a passive observer, but an active participant. They adapted and evolved in a landscape that demanded resilience and intelligence. These animals, each with their own unique characteristics, shaped the daily life of early hominins and played a role in the evolutionary path that eventually led to modern humans. The Pliocene and early Pleistocene were ages of experimentation, where nature tested its creations in a constantly changing environment. For Australopithecus, every encounter with the animals of their time was a step towards a deeper understanding of their world, a world that would lay the foundations for humanity itself. What if I told you hyenas once roamed Europe's frozen landscapes, or that a giraffe's ancient cousin could rival a T-Rex in size? Although this sounds impossible today, these were the kind of creatures our ancient ancestors, the Homo erectus, had to deal with on a daily basis. From bone-crushing predators to towering herbivores, the Homo erectus shared their world with some of the most incredible creatures to ever walk the earth. But what were these creatures? How did our ancestors interact with them? And how did it all end? Buckle up, this journey into the past is about to get wild. Today, if you wanted to see the mischievous hyena, you'd need to book a ticket to sub-Saharan Africa. But during the Pleistocene epoch, that trip would have been unnecessary. And that was thanks to the existence of the cave hyena, a formidable predator of the Pleistocene epoch that roamed around ancient Eurasia. Now, these were no ordinary hyenas because, anatomically, cave hyenas were much larger, averaging around 88 kilograms or 194 pounds, which is about 60% heavier than the modern spotted hyena. For perspective, this hyena is about the weight of a medium fridge, with powerful jaws designed for perfectly crushing the carcasses of large animals like wild horses, steppe bison, and even woolly rhinoceroses. Unlike its descendants, this hyena had longer limbs, especially in the humeral and femoral bones. This strange adaptation hints that this beast had a possible adaptation to colder climates, which would make a lot of sense, as it would allow them to move more efficiently across vast frozen landscapes. As for their diet, cave hyenas were true opportunists. Well, these hyenas were very versatile. They were active hunters going after large ungulates like wild horses and reindeer. But even though they were good hunters, that doesn't mean they would pass on a good scavenging opportunity either. Because of this opportunistic behavior, their diet was flexible, often including whatever they could find. When it comes to social lives, fossilized remains found in caves suggest they lived in social groups, though likely not the vast clans we see in today's spotted hyenas. Thanks to research, we now know these hyenas regularly interacted with other predators, especially cave lions and early humans. These interactions, however, were likely competitive, with hyenas often taking what they could find from other carnivores' kills. Speaking of interactions, the cave hyena's relationship with humans was, in a word, complex. For one fossil, evidence shows that they not only scavenged Neanderthal remains, but may have even competed with early humans for resources. Some caves even show that hyenas and early humans took turns using the same spots, suggesting they might have shared these spaces for hunting or shelter. So what happened to them in the end? Why aren't there any hyenas in Eurasia? Well, though their reign lasted for thousands of years, the cave hyena's extinction was mainly due to shifting climate, reduced prey availability, and, of course, increasing competition from humans and other predators. Ultimately, just 7,000 years ago, these formidable predators became a memory etched in fossils, leaving behind only their distant relatives and a reminder of a wilder, harsher world. But if you think European hyenas were weird, get ready, because I can bet you've never heard of the next animal on our list. Affectionately named the Siberian unicorn, the Homotherium was a rhino so massive and majestic, it could easily be mistaken for a mythical creature. But don't be fooled, this wasn't a dainty unicorn from fairy tales. This was a beast that roamed the grasslands of Eurasia about 2.6 million to 29 million years ago. The Homotherium was a titan, standing up to 2 meters or 6.6 feet tall at the shoulder and stretching around 5 meters or 16.4 feet in length. For context, that's roughly the height of a basketball hoop and as long as a mid-size SUV. It likely weighed around the same as a modern-day pickup truck, at about 4,000 kilograms or 8,800 pounds. However, this was nothing because its most striking feature was a massive keratin horn, possibly the same size as a fence post, at over a meter or 3.3 feet long. Now, Homotherium wasn't just a pretty face. It was built for survival. Its thick, woolly coat helped it endure icy climates, while its long legs suggested it was a decent runner, not the lumbering tank you'd expect. For food, it primarily grazed on tough, dry grasses, using its large, square teeth perfectly adapted for grinding fibrous plants. Just think of it as nature's lawnmower, but on steroids. As for its relations with the Homo erectus, there's evidence that suggests these early humans encountered Homotherium, possibly scavenging its remains or even hunting weaker individuals. With such a massive horn, it's tempting to imagine these animals were the inspiration behind some ancient myths. But as we leave the tundra and step into the forests of Southeast Asia, we have to change focus a bit, as we come face to face with a fascinating elephant ancestor that was just as colossal as our Siberian unicorn. Imagine an elephant, but now give it tusks so long they could make your car look like a matchbox. All done? Good. What you have right there is a stegodon, one of the colossal relatives of modern elephants that roamed Asia and parts of Africa during the Pleistocene epoch. These giants could grow up to 4 meters or 13 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh as much as 12 metric tons or about 26,000 pounds. That, by the way, is basically the combined weight of 3 SUVs. Their tusks alone could stretch up to 3 meters or 10 feet, about the length of a small fishing boat. Anatomically, the stegodon was built for strength. Its stocky legs supported its immense weight, while its broad, flat molars were perfect for grinding up tough vegetation. Unlike modern elephants, though, their tusks were often close together, forming almost a barrier in front of their faces. This feature was unique and might have helped them bulldoze through dense forests or intimidate predators. When it came to their diet, they were herbivores with an appetite that could rival a food truck's stock. They munched on grass, fruits, and bark, using their massive size to knock down trees for a feast. They were so massive that their dietary habits reshaped their habitats, which, by the way, included lush forests and river valleys where food was abundant. As for their interactions with Homo erectus, it's a fascinating mix of predator and prey. See, early humans hunted stegodons for their meat and bones, which were likely used for tools and shelters. There is even evidence of stegodon remains at Homo erectus sites, suggesting that these massive creatures were not only a challenge, but also a prized bounty for early human ingenuity. Now, speaking of giants that roamed the same regions, wait until you hear about a hippo with 6 massive tusks. The Hexaprotodon was simply a beast. Simply put, the Hexaprotodon was the ancient cousin of the modern hippo. This massive creature didn't, however, just wade around looking cute. It was built like a tank. Measuring around 4 meters or 13 feet in length and weighing up to 2,000 kilograms or 4,400 pounds, this monster is about the weight of a mid-size SUV and was very much a force to be reckoned with. On a weirder note, its name, Hexaprotodon, literally means 6 front teeth. And yes, those 6 robust tusks made for a jaw that could crush through vegetation like a garden shredder on steroids. The Hexaprotodon lived in rivers, lakes, and swamps, making its home in tropical and subtropical regions across Asia. Think of it as your local hippo, but with a penchant for wider, marshier waters. Its semi-aquatic lifestyle allowed it to graze on grasses, reeds, and other vegetation near water sources, making it a vital part of its ecosystem. Interestingly, this beast coexisted with early humans like Homo erectus, as fossil evidence suggests humans hunted the Hexaprotodon, likely for its meat and tusks. These tusks especially may have been used for tools or cultural purposes. But let's be real, taking on something this size wasn't just a meal, it was a monumental task, and possibly even a rite of passage for these ancient hominins. Ultimately, changing climates and human hunting likely spelled the end for the Hexaprotodon. But still on the topic of giants with a touch of mystery, let me introduce you to a towering ape that makes King Kong seem more like a reality than a blockbuster, the Gigantopithecus. Imagine walking through the dense forests of ancient Southeast Asia and encountering a creature so massive it would make modern gorillas look like toddlers. That right there is the Gigantopithecus, the largest ape ever to walk the earth. Standing up to 3 meters or 10 feet tall when upright and weighing about 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds, this ape was roughly the same weight as a grand piano or a polar bear that roamed the Pleistocene epoch. Anatomically, the Gigantopithecus was built for munching, with robust jaws and thick, flat molars. It specialized in grinding down tough vegetation like bamboo, nuts, and fruits. Just think of it as the prehistoric version of a panda's eating habits, but on a much grander scale. While we don't have a full skeleton, fossils of its teeth and jawbones suggested it moved on all fours, similar to today's orangutans. As for its habitat, it likely roamed the subtropical forests of what is now China, India, and Vietnam. Here the dense foliage provided both food and shelter for the massive ape, although it probably would have had to contend with predators like saber-toothed cats and, of course, Homo erectus. Evidence even shows humans might have scavenged its remains or even hunted this gentle giant, possibly accelerating its extinction around 300,000 years ago. Now, while the Gigantopithecus is a mystery and a fascinating herbivore, it's not the only one on our list, and the next one is sure to have you confused, especially when you hear about its claws. The Palaeoloxodon, in many ways, is an animal that looks like it belongs in a fantasy movie. I mean, just look at it. It looks like a mashup of a gorilla, a horse, and, weirdly, a sloth. This bizarre herbivore roamed the ancient grasslands and forests of Eurasia and Africa during the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, baffling anyone who might have stumbled upon them, including, of course, the Homo erectus. Now, anatomically, this creature stood around 2 meters or 6.5 feet tall when it stood up on its hind legs. For perspective, that's about the height of an average doorway. It weighed up to 1,000 kilograms or 2,200 pounds, practically the same weight as a small car. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear about its claws. Like today's gorillas, this monster's front limbs were much longer than its hind legs, giving it a slope. Unlike the gorilla though, the Homotherium's most striking feature was its huge claws that measured about 30 centimeters or 12 inches long. That's roughly the size of a ruler you'd find on a school desk. But these weren't weapons. Oh no, Homotherium was a gentle giant, using its claws to pull down branches to munch on leaves, fruits, and soft vegetation. To make it even weirder, unlike many grazing herbivores, this quirky creature preferred browsing in the forest edges, avoiding open plains. Generally, its interactions with the Homo erectus were likely rare and cautious. Its odd gait and massive size might have made it more of a curiosity than a threat, though its claws could have served as a solid defense against predators or nosy humans. Though the Homotherium eventually vanished, leaving its descendants in the fossil record, it stands as a reminder of just how strange and diverse ancient life could be. And if those claws didn't impress you, get ready to meet ones that will. Although it sounds like a forgotten human ancestor, the Homotherium was actually a highly specialized and successful predator, whose unique adaptations made it both a deadly hunter and a victim of changing times. Often referred to as the scimitar-toothed cat, this apex predator roamed the earth from the Pliocene to the Pleistocene epochs. That's right, this terror existed from approximately 4 million to 12,000 years ago. Once prowling across North America, Eurasia, and Africa, this predator and its unique adaptations were two of the most intriguing felids in prehistoric history. See, unlike many cats, the Homotherium's build was more suited for endurance hunting rather than the classic ambush tactic. Standing at around 1.1 meters or 3.7 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 190 kilograms or 420 pounds, this monster was closer to the modern-day lion and was a formidable predator. However, unlike the more powerfully built Smilodon, Homotherium had long, slender limbs that tell us that this creature relied on stamina to chase down its prey. And when it finally catches its prey, the Homotherium's distinctive serrated canines were designed perfectly for gripping and puncturing, rather than slicing. Although shorter than those of its cousin, the Smilodon, these teeth perfectly equip the Homotherium for tackling large herbivores like mammoths. This monster wasn't just efficient, it was also everywhere. Like many big cats, the Homotherium's geographic range extended across a vast variety of habitats, from open grasslands to forested areas. Using its speed and group hunting strategies, it primarily preyed on large herbivores, including juvenile mammoths. We know this because fossil evidence points to a social structure, with groups of Homotherium likely hunting together in cooperative packs, much like modern-day lions or wolves. This social behavior would have been crucial for taking down large prey and, by extension, the species' survival. However, despite its impressive hunting skills, the Homotherium eventually faced extinction, likely due to climate change, habitat loss, and, like most animals, increasing competition with humans. And that's because as human populations expanded, the pressure on megafauna like Homotherium intensified, ultimately leading to its eventual disappearance around the end of the Pleistocene. If you think the Homotherium was a big cat, buckle your seatbelt and hold on to your popcorn, because the next big cat struck fear in everyone. When it comes to prehistoric big cats, few were as fearsome as the cave lion, Panthera spelaea. A formidable predator of the Pleistocene epoch, the cave lion was among the largest big cats to ever roam the earth. The adult male of these extinct felines measured around 1.2 meters or 3 feet 11 inches at the shoulder and reached weights of up to 339 kilograms or 747 pounds, surpassing most living lions in bulk and power. This monster took the king of the jungle to a different level. For one, their skulls featured a longer, narrower muzzle. Instead of hunting the savannas like their modern lions, they lurked in caves. The same caves ancient humans called home. Much like the cave hyenas, these lions roamed vast territories, from Western Europe to Northern Asia and even parts of North America, thanks to the Bering Land Bridge. Hunting mammoth steppe, they preferred open plains and grassy habitats, though fossil evidence indicates they ventured into mountainous areas, potentially preying on hibernating bears. Their diet included reindeer, bison, muskox, and even juvenile mammoths, making them, in every sense of the word, apex predators of their time. And as you would expect, their interactions with early humans and Neanderthals were a complex dynamic. In early society, cave lions were both hunted and revered, as evidenced by the cave art that depicted them. To take things a bit further, fossil remains with butchery marks confirms they were used for sustenance and possibly for pelts. And in the battle of apex predators, humans eventually claimed victory as hunting pressure increased and the climate change at the end of the Ice Age delivered the final blow. Before they could adapt, open plains gave way to forests, prey populations dwindled, and by 13,000 years ago, the mighty cave lion was no more. Perhaps one of the most popular animals out there today is the humble cow. But if you think modern cows are impressive, wait until you hear about the Palaeoloxodon, the ancient mega-cow of the Pleistocene and early Holocene. Standing up to 2 meters or 6.5 feet tall at the shoulder, these animals were about the height of a tall refrigerator while still managing to weigh the same as a compact car at an incredible 1,200 kilograms or 2,645 pounds. Anatomically, the Palaeoloxodon was built with a robust frame and curved horns that spanned up to 3 meters or 10 feet tip to tip. These horns weren't just for show either, they served as formidable tools for defense and dominance. The Palaeoloxodon grazed in open savannas and wetlands across Africa, feasting on grasses and other vegetation. This was thanks to its sturdy teeth and powerful jaws that were perfect for grinding down tough plant fibers. These massive grazers likely roamed in herds, much like modern buffalo, offering mutual protection against predators. Today, we know that Homo erectus undoubtedly encountered these giants, perhaps hunting them in coordinated groups using spears and traps. After all, a single Palaeoloxodon could provide enough meat to feed an entire band of early humans for days. But taking one down was no small feat. These animals were as dangerous as they were valuable, and hunting them likely shaped early human cooperation and tool use. And speaking of danger, let's move from the towering plains to the rivers, where the Crocodilus thorbianarseni waited, jaws wide open. Today, it's hard to imagine a crocodile so terrifying, it could make modern Nile crocodiles look like plush toys. But you don't have to, and that's all because of the Crocodylus thorbjarnarssoni, a prehistoric monster that prowled the waterways of East Africa during the Pleistocene epoch. This beast was no joke, as it grew up to 7.5 meters or 25 feet long and weighed around 900 kilograms or 2,000 pounds. For perspective, that's about the length of a standard school bus and nearly the weight of a small car. If you think modern crocodiles are intimidating, imagine encountering this supersized predator as it lounged in the muddy banks, waiting for a meal to get just a little too close. Anatomically, it had a broad, powerful skull, armed with a set of razor-sharp teeth designed to crush bones and grip struggling prey. Its jaw strength was likely immense, capable of handling large prey like ancient antelope, giant tortoises, or even possibly early humans like Homo erectus. Speaking of the watering hole, the Crocodylus thorbjarnarssoni was a master of its habitat, thriving in rivers, lakes, and wetlands. Its diet consisted of anything unfortunate enough to come near the water's edge, using an ambush strategy much like modern crocodilians. Fossil evidence even suggests this predator would have been a significant danger to Homo erectus, making early humans cautious around waterways. But as fearsome as it was, it eventually succumbed to changing climates and competition, leaving its legacy to the crocodiles we know today. Now, if you thought this apex predator was chilling, wait until you hear about a bone-crushing scavenger that might have given it a run for its money. The mighty Pachycrocuta. Imagine running into a hyena, but not just any hyena, not even a cave hyena, but rather a monstrous beast that makes modern-day hyenas look like oversized house dogs. Meet the Pachycrocuta brevirostris, the largest hyena species to ever walk the earth. It lived during the Pleistocene epoch, thriving in parts of Europe, Asia, and of course, Africa. In terms of size, this bad boy weighed about 100 to 125 kilograms, or 226 to 276 pounds. Roughly the weight of a full-grown male lion, or for perspective, your average washing machine. Standing about 90 centimeters, or 3 feet tall at the shoulder, Pachycrocuta was built for power rather than speed. Its anatomy was practically a masterclass in scavenging thanks to its short, robust snout and exceptionally strong jaw muscles. Essentially, the Pachycrocuta could crush bones with ease, feasting on the nutritious marrow inside. Even its teeth were specialized for cracking open the toughest remains, making it the cleanup crew of the ancient world. As for its habits and habitat, this predator roamed upon savannas, grasslands, and wooded areas. It wasn't much of a hunter, relying instead on scavenging carcasses left behind by other predators or natural deaths. Basically, it most likely followed large herbivores like mammoths or rhinoceroses, waiting for them to fall prey to old age, illness, or other predators. Now, how did Pachycrocuta interact with Homo erectus? Well, fossil evidence suggests that the two may have competed for resources. Today, some archaeological sites show signs of scavenging activity by both species, hinting at a tug-of-war over valuable meat and bones. But Pachycrocuta didn't just lose scraps to early humans. They also faced pressure from climate changes and dwindling food supplies, which ultimately led to their extinction. And with their disappearance, so ended the reign of one of the most fearsome scavengers the world has ever known. The Ice Age wasn't just cold, it was cruel. Everything was out to get you, and it wasn't just the weather. From towering beasts to prey with daggers for horns, the animals of this era had more than ice in their veins. They had murder in their bones. Yet somehow, in this frozen hellscape, our ancient ancestors, the Cro-Magnons, not only survived, they thrived. But how? What kind of monsters did they face, and what kind of world did they dare to call home? Okay, say you were transported suddenly to about 30,000 years ago. There would be a bunch of things that would be out to get you, but among them all, the scimitar cat is perhaps one of the most terrifying. Also known as the Homotherium latidans, the scimitar was a saber-toothed carnivore unlike any big cat alive today. This was a predator the size of a modern lion that stood about 1.1 meters or 3.6 foot tall at the shoulders. Essentially, this big cat was the height of a kitchen countertop, but had a body that looked more like a hyena, thanks to its long forelimbs, short hind limbs, and a back sloped for endurance running. To put this simply, this cat was no joke, and the adult males could weigh up to 250 kilograms, which, by the way, is more than 3 average adult humans combined. And as if that wasn't threatening enough, that was not its scariest trait. That award actually goes to its scimitar-shaped canine teeth. These killing weapons from hell were shorter and broader than the well-known smilodons, but still packed a punch because they were serrated like a butcher's knife. Horrific images aside, these teeth function to slice and shear through thick hides and thick muscle rather than stab. Along with its muscular, strong forelimbs and gripping claws, this cat could easily and deliberately capture and take down large prey. Keeping in line with the horrors of big cats like lions, fossil evidence from multiple sites across Europe suggests the scimitar cat probably hunted in a pack, unlike other saber-toothed cats. Essentially, if you ran into one of these nightmares, chances are you wouldn't be fighting one battle that day. And to be fair, you might not even know it's there until it's too late. And that's because it was specialized for stalking young mammoths, bison, and wild horses in open habitats, like the Ice Age grasslands. So in a way, it was something like a combination of a cheetah and a pack of wolves, fast, cooperative, and deadly over distance. So how did the Cro-Magnons survive against some of hell's greatest soldiers? Well, evidence shows that while the Homotherium existed alongside Cro-Magnon people, there is no established evidence to show whether they fought directly with one another or did not, which is weird, seeing as they were both hunting the same prey. It is entirely possible Cro-Magnons stole the big cat's meals or defended their own food from this alpha predator, but either way, their interactions would have been high-stakes moves in an evolutionary dance of survival. According to research, the Homotherium was likely adapted to cold conditions and may have had long, dense fur. It also had very large nasal cavities, which was a potential indicator of a sense of smell that was better than humans. Sadly, or thankfully, depending on your camp, they disappeared about 30,000 years ago due to changes in climate, the lack of availability of megafauna for food, and competition from humans. But during its run, that monster would have ruled the lands and struck fear in everyone's heart. But if you think the scimitar cat's teeth were scary, wait till you see the next animal. So seeing hippos on a list of extinct animals is weird, but go back 30,000 years ago and it will all make sense. Although they may initially appear to be scaled up or bigger modern hippos, what the Cro-Magnons faced were actually Ice Age Europe's gigantic ancestors. Like a pickup truck, they weighed in at 3,200 kilograms or 7,054 pounds and were 5 meters or 16 feet long. These European hippos were stoutly built with a trunk-like heavy body and a barrel chest, as strong as a tank. As if that wasn't scary enough, they could open their jaws 150 degrees wide. For context, that's wide enough to swallow a man whole. And if that didn't put fear into your heart, their jaws were lined with vicious canines and incisors, and they were not for chewing. For grinding, they had molars that handled the tough sedges and grasses they grazed by night. And we say they grazed here heavily because they consumed up to 60 kilograms or 132 pounds daily. That's the weight of a grown adult. These massive monsters lived in pods of 5 to 30, gathering in rivers, lakes, and marshes. Their days were spent submerged, with only eyes, ears, and nostrils peeking above water, which, to be fair, was a perfect design for an aquatic life. But don't be fooled by their sleepy look. Hippos were, and still are, extremely territorial. And much like modern hippos, the males marked their turf with dung and charged intruders, including Cro-Magnon humans. Though both species shared river valleys, Cro-Magnons most likely avoided direct conflict. After all, hippos were too dangerous to hunt regularly. On the other hand though, their carcasses may have been scavenged, especially during harsh winters. Hippo fossils have been found from the UK to Spain, overlapping Cro-Magnon settlements until about 30,000 years ago. But as Ice Age climates grew harsher, their wetland habitats vanished, and with them, the hippos of Ice Age Europe. Never depicted in cave art, they may have haunted Cro-Magnon myths, a silent, dangerous presence in the water, lurking just out of sight. The sager antelope, aka Sager borealis, is an extinct European subspecies of today's Sager tartarica that lived during the late Pleistocene in the cold, dry steppe habitats of Europe. Marginally larger than Sager did today, these ancient animals weighed between 30 and 60 kilograms, or 66 to 132 pounds, and stood about 0.7 to 0.9 meters, or 2.7 to 2.9 feet at the shoulder. Size aside, one of the things that made the sager so special was a large, bulbous nose they used for filtering dust and warming the cold, dry air of the Ice Age longitudinal and seasonal climates. Much like antelopes today, sagers lived in massive, socially bonded groups, often migrating seasonally from Great Britain and Europe to Russia across extensive grasslands. And much like their relatives today, the sagers were fast and agile, and were even capable of running up to 80 kilometers an hour, or 49 miles an hour. Now, this was absolutely crucial, as they relied on speed to escape the likes of wolves and cave lions, animals that we will dive into later. For defense, male sagers had backward curving horns that they used to battle not just predators but also other males for mating purposes. Regarding their connection with the Cro-Magnons, it is quite likely that they hunted them as they followed one of their regular migratory routes. This is supported by the fact that sager bones were found in archaeological digs at Gough's Cave with cut marks on them, but somehow they were not mentioned in cave art. This is especially shocking because their hides and meat were important to the Cro-Magnons. Today, researchers say they were likely not as culturally significant as mammoths or bison, and as such, did not get a painting. In the end, following the Ice Age, forests replaced steppes, the hunting pressure increased, and Sager borealis disappeared between 10,000 and 9,000 years ago, bringing an end to a truly weird animal. Today, sagers remain at risk of extinction, but due to conservation efforts, they have been reassigned from critically endangered, which is what they were referred to in 2013, to near threatened, ensuring that history does not repeat itself. Okay, sure, the sager didn't make it up the cave walls, but this animal took front and center in almost every artwork. To put it simply, if the mammoth was the rock star of the Ice Age, then the steppe wiesent was the even larger, heavier, heavyweight champion that just so happened to be built like a bulldozer with horns. Weighing nearly 2,000 kilograms or 4,400 pounds and towering 2 meters or 6'5" tall, the bison priscus, the original steppe bison, lumbered across the European landscape of the Ice Age like it owned the place, and honestly, it had every right to. Covered in shaggy fur, this absolute unit boasted an enviable shoulder hump and horns that grew to a meter, perfect for jousting, headbutting, or simply looking intimidating. To make things even crazier, more than any other animal, the Cro-Magnons knew this beast all too well. So much so that they likely smelled them before they even saw them. And as if a giant horned tank wasn't scary, well, consider the fact that these bison weren't loners. Nope, they moved in massive herds, kicking up clouds of dust as they grazed on endless fields of Ice Age grasses. And as you'd expect, when predators or humans got too close, the herd would circle the calves, hooves thundering, horns ready, and death imminent. But even with all their muscles, like many animals before and after them, they couldn't outrun extinction. According to researchers, the Cro-Magnons painted them in Lascaux and butchered them at campsites like Gough's Cave. Their meat fed tribes, their hides clothed them, and hunting them might have been a rite of passage for young Cro-Magnons. In the end, as the Ice Age thawed and forests swallowed the steppe, the mighty steppe wiesent vanished, but their bones and art remain, frozen reminders of Europe's original bison boss. You know the saying, as stubborn as a goat? Well, it turns out even evolution supports it, as it seems that Cro-Magnons encountered wild mountain goats during the late Pleistocene period, about 30,000 years ago. These mountain goats were the closest relatives of the early Capra ibex, and were among the remaining wild ungulars that were well adjusted to Europe's inhospitable, rugged highlands. These animals varied in size, from about 40 to 120 kilograms, or 88 pounds to 264 pounds. Much like today's goats, these mountain goats had their distinctive curved horns, which were especially grand in males, who had meter-long rigid horns that were used in battles over dominance. These mountain goats had thick coats to handle extreme environmental conditions, and matted coats that shed across the seasons. Their rubbery cloven hooves allowed for remarkable agility across cliffs and crags. And like goats today, the mountain goats lived in small herds of 5 to 20 animals each. When it came to relations with the ancient humans, Cro-Magnons most likely hunted them using ambush tactics, as seen in sites like Grotte de Lazaret. Today, goat remains across different sites show cut marks, tool use, and even symbolic cave art that tells us that these animals had cultural and subsistence value. Though not extinct in the full sense of the word, these Pleistocene goats either evolved into modern ibex or disappeared as warming climates shrank their alpine habitats. Strange name aside, the straight-tusked elephant, which is scientifically called Palaeoloxodon antiquus, was a large herbivore that, during the Pleistocene epoch, took things to the next level. For starters, the straight-tusked elephant is an elephant species you would recognize from its size, tusks, and behavior. Even though it is considered similar to a very popular cousin who shares the same stage, the woolly mammoth, this massive elephant was quite different. For one, when it comes to what defines a large herbivore, the straight-tusked elephant fits the bill quite nicely. In fact, the straight-tusked elephant was one of the largest land mammals to ever walk on Earth, reaching lengths of up to 7 meters or 22 foot long, and weights of over 15,000 kilograms or 33,000 pounds. Saying this elephant was large would be a bit of an understatement, as it was twice the size of an average school bus. On top of that, it had tusks that were roughly 4 meters or 13 foot long. For context, that's long enough to spear through trees or scare the daylights out of anything in its way. Also, unlike their more famous relatives, the mammoth, this species had very little fur, as it was better suited to a warmer world. Like most elephants today, the straight-tusked elephants were likely matriarchal, meaning they were living in family groups or herds, with the herd, of course, led by the older and more experienced females. Males, however, were usually single, but they did come together as groups of bachelors during the mating times of the year. As a bowser, the straight-tusked elephant fed mostly on leaves, branches and bark. Now, when it comes to their Cro-Magnon connection, there is actually little evidence that suggested they hunted straight-tusked elephants. It is, however, very likely that Cro-Magnons scavenged elephant carcasses or hunted juveniles. After all, the elephant species would have provided abundant resources, including meat, bones to fashion into tools, and tusks to carve into another hunting or utilitarian tool. In the end, the straight-tusked elephant probably went extinct around 30,000 years ago due to competition with the changing climate and behavioral challenges presented by the human species. Okay, now it's time for some honorable mentions, those unforgettable creatures Cro-Magnons crossed paths with, but that didn't make the main spotlight. European Ice Age leopard. Now, this was not your modern jungle cat. The Ice Age leopard was stockier, adapted to the cold, and a quiet, shadow-stalking predator. Luckily, Cro-Magnons probably did not see them frequently, since leopards hunted as singletons and were very furtive. They must have been a mix of both beautiful and terrifying, as when the Cro-Magnons saw them, they most likely got attacked. And that's pretty scary, because these animals are capable of snatching prey or careless humans with terrifying precision. In short, they were beautiful and deadly, and most likely the reason some fires burnt a little longer through the night. Cave hyena. Forget everything you know about today's hyenas. These were much bigger, bolder, and absolutely fearless. Much like today, cave hyenas were social hunters that used their bone-crushing jaws to compete with Cro-Magnons and other predators. Just imagine coming home to your cave after a long day, only to find it overrun by a laughing, growling mob. Yeah, they were a serious problem. Cave bear. Not your average teddy bear. These were massive, up to 3.5 meters when standing. Cro-Magnons likely encountered their bones and maybe the occasional living beast in shared caves. Some evidence suggests they even venerated them, possibly out of respect or sheer survival anxiety. Either way, the cave bear loomed large in their world. Aurochs. In many ways, the aurochs were the original wild cattle, and when we say wild, we do mean wild. Just think of them as supersized bulls with a temper. Regardless though, Cro-Magnons hunted them for meat, hides and bones. Although, to be fair, it was no walk in the park. One single misstep could mean a fatal goring. Like the bison, these cattle appear in cave art, which just shows how impactful and probably delicious these giants were to the Cro-Magnon. Woolly mammoth, the superstar of the Ice Age, covered in thick fur, towering at 4 meters tall and equipped with spiral tusks like natural snowplows. Mammoths were walking fortresses, but somehow, Cro-Magnons hunted them in groups, using cunning traps and teamwork. For their effort, they were rewarded with food, tools, clothing, and legendary stories passed down for generations. Woolly rhinoceros. Much like the woolly mammoth, this animal too was a giant, shaggier than their modern cousins and just as grumpy. Woolly rhinos weren't easy prey, but Cro-Magnons left behind some vivid cave art of them, so whether they were admiring from a distance or tracking one down, these tank-like beasts made an impression. Narrow-nosed rhinoceros, sleekier than the woolly kind, but no less dangerous. This species preferred temperate forests and likely vanished before the end of the Ice Age, but not before early humans got a look. Not much art or bones remain, but its legacy lives in ancient layers of both fear and fascination. European wild horse. These were the ancestors of today's domesticated horses, stocky, shaggy, and built for the cold. Cro-Magnons didn't ride them, yet, but they certainly painted them, hunted them, and maybe even followed their migrations. Essentially, hoofbeats in the Ice Age meant either dinner or danger. Irish elk. Known for their enormous antlers, these majestic deer weren't Irish nor elk, but their 12-foot antler span made them unforgettable. so much so that Cro-Magnons depicted them often, maybe as a food source, maybe as a symbol of strength. Either way, they were an unreal part of their lives and could sometimes decide if the ancient humans would see another day. Dire wolf. Game of Thrones and science breakthroughs aside, the dire wolves were truly terrifying. Bigger than today's wolves and likely smarter in packs, dire wolves prowled the colder edges of Europe. Researchers believe Cro-Magnons may have lost livestock or lives to these shadowy predators, and those two might have had a complex relationship that swung between friends and foes. In the end, the world of the Cro-Magnons wasn't just painted in ochre and bone, it was carved out in blood, frost, and fire. Every sunrise was borrowed time, every shadow a question mark. Was it a predator, prey, or something ancient and unknowable? From ghostly sagas darting across the plains to hippos that could flatten a grown man without warning, to scimitar cats that hunted like phantoms on the wind. This was a world where staying alive wasn't guaranteed, it was earned. They didn't have cities, they didn't have language, but they had to survive in a world crawling with monsters. Long before Homo sapiens ever left Africa, another human species ruled the icy frontiers of Europe and Asia, the Neanderthals. For hundreds of thousands of years, they walked through a world of giants, towering beasts, deadly predators, and an environment that showed no mercy. So how did they survive? They weren't the dumb cavemen from cartoons. Neanderthals were survival machines, short, stocky, and tough as mammoth hide. Standing around 5'5", 165 centimeters, and weighing up to 175 pounds, 80 kilograms. They were built for brute endurance. But strength wasn't their only trick. They crafted razor-sharp flint knives and deadly stone-tipped spears, basically the prehistoric version of Swiss army knives, if your life depended on it. But here's the twist. Neanderthals weren't always the hunters. In a world this savage, sometimes they were the prey. In fact, a 2016 study of Neanderthal skeletons tells a chilling story. 36% had scars from bear attacks. Big cats had mauled 21% and 17% carried the bite marks of wolves. For thousands of years, they fought, adapted, and survived, standing their ground against some of the most fearsome predators in history. But what were these Ice Age monsters, and how did Neanderthals hold their own against them? When it comes to predators, Neanderthals drew the short end of the straw because the animals they had to survive against were not just deadly, they were brutal. And perhaps the worst of them all were cave bears, with the 2016 study showing that bears made up 36% of injuries. The bears of the Ice Age were anything but to be messed with. The cave bear, scientifically called Ursus spelaeus, was a formidable predator in Pleistocene Europe. It coexisted with Neanderthals and other Ice Age fauna until its extinction around 24,000 years ago. In terms of size, male cave bears were significantly larger than most contemporary bear species, weighing between 350 to 600 kilograms, or 770 to 1,300 pounds. To put this into perspective, the average male grizzly bear weighs about 270 kilograms or 600 pounds, making cave bears substantially heavier. And if their weight wasn't scary enough, wait until you hear about their size. When standing on their hind legs, cave bears could reach up to 3 meters or 10 feet in height, towering over the average human and even surpassing the height of a modern Kodiak bear, which, by the way, are among the largest bears today. And if that wasn't enough of an evolutionary advantage, their massive skulls housed large canines and powerful jaw features that, despite their herbivorous diet, could deliver formidable defensive bites. Now, if you are wondering, yes, I said herbivore diet. See, despite its massive size, the cave bear was primarily on a plant-based diet, feeding on roots, nuts, fruits, and leaves. We know of this herbivorous tendency thanks to the distinctive wear patterns on their large molars, which were adapted for grinding tough vegetation. Interestingly, even modern brown bears share a similar dietary preference, with 70 to 90% of their diet completely comprising plant matter. But don't be fooled though, a herbivorous diet does not mean that this massive animal did not do damage. In actuality, the relationship between Neanderthals and cave bears was complex and fraught with danger. And that was mostly because both species lived in caves, meaning there were a lot of dangerous and often violent encounters between the two. So much so that evidence from Neanderthal skeletal remains indicates that 36% of injuries were inflicted by bears. These injuries likely resulted from surprise encounters within the confined spaces of caves, where escape was difficult. It's impossible to imagine just how hard it would have been to know that at any moment you would have to fight a titan with nothing but your bare hands, a long stick, and luck. But somehow, despite the risks, Neanderthals did the impossible and actually hunted cave bears. But how? Well, these ancient hunters particularly targeted the bears during hibernation when they were less active. We know this thanks to evidence of cut marks on bear bones and the presence of Neanderthal tools in cave bear dens. It goes without saying that these kind of hunts required immense bravery and skill, as even a hibernating cave bear could awaken and defend itself fiercely. But somehow, the Neanderthals did it. After all, a single bear could feed a whole colony for days. But here's the thing, the bears weren't the only animals that shared their home with them, and the next animal was just as crafty as the ancient humans who tried to survive it. Today, when we think of cats, almost everyone thinks of domestic cats, or at best, lions and tigers. But when the Neanderthals thought of felines, they were haunted by the reality of animals who would spell doom on almost every encounter. And the crazy part is, they too thought of lions and tigers, just way bigger ones. When it comes to prehistoric big cats, few were as fearsome as the cave lion, Panthera spelaea. A formidable predator of the Pleistocene epoch, the cave lion was among the largest big cats to ever roam the earth. The adult males of these extinct felines were around 25% larger than modern lions and measured around 1.2 meters or 3 feet 11 inches at the shoulder and reached weights of up to 339 kilograms or 747 pounds. Surpassing most living lions in both bulk and power, this monster took the king of the jungle to a different level. For one, their skulls featured a longer, narrower muzzle, and instead of hunting the savannas like their modern lions do, they lurked in caves, the same caves ancient humans called home. Much like the cave hyenas that we will soon talk about, the cave lions roamed vast territories, from Western Europe to Northern Asia and even parts of North America thanks to the Bering Land Bridge. Hunting mammoth steppe, they preferred open plains and grassy habitats, though fossil evidence indicates that they ventured into mountainous areas, potentially preying on hibernating bears. Yes, they hunted the bears we just talked about. Their diet included reindeer, bison, muskox, and even juvenile mammoths, making them, in every sense of the word, apex predators of their time. And as you would expect, their interactions with early humans and Neanderthals were a complex dynamic. In early society, cave lions were both hunted and revered, as evidenced by the cave art that depicted them. To take things a bit further, fossil remains with butchery marks confirm they were used for sustenance and possibly for pelts. See, approximately 48,000 years ago, Neanderthals engaged in the hunting and skinning of cave lions. We know this because evidence from a cave lion skeleton discovered in Seigsdorf, Germany, reveals puncture marks on the ribs consistent with wounds from modern thrusting spears, indicating that Neanderthals actively hunted these formidable creatures. But if ancient humans hunting cave lions with just wooden spears wasn't enough to wow you, then consider the fact that further analysis of cave lion remains from the Einhornhöhle cave in northern Germany shows cut marks on toe bones, suggesting meticulous skinning practices. Today, scientists believe that the preservation of claws within the pelt implies that Neanderthals valued these skins, possibly for clothing or symbolic purposes. And to be fair, hunting with just wooden spears isn't far off because historically, in modern times, some tribes hunted jaguars for various reasons, including protection and cultural significance. Essentially, in the battle of apex predators, humans eventually claimed victory. As hunting pressure increased, the climate change at the end of the Ice Age delivered the final blow. Before they could adapt, open plains gave way to forests. Prey populations dwindled, and by 13,000 years ago, the mighty cave lion was no more. However, the cave lion was simply one of the many monsters they had to face, as they also had to battle a monster of a cat named the Homotherium. Although it sounds like a forgotten human ancestor, the Homotherium was actually a highly specialized and successful predator whose unique adaptations made it both a deadly hunter and a victim of changing times. Often referred to as the scimitar-toothed cat, this apex predator roamed the earth from the Pliocene to the Pleistocene epochs. That's right, this terror existed from approximately 4 million to 12,000 years ago. Once prowling across North America, Eurasia, and Africa, this predator and its unique adaptation were one of the most intriguing fields in prehistoric history. See, unlike many cats, the Homotherium's build was more suited for endurance hunting rather than the classic ambush tactic. Standing around 1.1 meters or 3.7 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 190 kilograms or 420 pounds, This monster was closer to the modern-day lion and was a formidable predator the size of a small Neanderthal. However, unlike the more powerfully built Smilodon, Homotherium had long, slender limbs that tell us that this creature relied on stamina to chase down its prey. And when it finally catches its prey, the Homotherium's distinctive serrated canines were designed perfectly for gripping and puncturing rather than slicing. Although shorter than those of its cousin the Smilodon, these teeth perfectly equip the Homotherium for tackling large herbivores like mammoths. This monster wasn't just efficient, it was also everywhere. Like many big cats, the Homotherium's geographic range extended across a vast variety of habitats, from open grasslands to forested areas. Using its speed and group hunting strategies, it primarily preyed on large herbivores, including juvenile mammoths. We know this because fossil evidence points to a social structure, with groups of Homotherium likely hunting together in cooperative packs, much like modern-day lions or wolves. This social behavior would have been crucial for taking down large prey and, by extension, the species' survival. However, despite its impressive hunting skills, the Homotherium eventually faced extinction, likely due to climate change, habitat loss, and, like most animals, increasing competition with humans. And that's because as human populations expanded, the pressure on megafauna like Homotherium intensified, ultimately leading to its eventual disappearance around the end of the Pleistocene. Homotherium aside though, another big cat that roamed the earth causing so much havoc that both Neanderthals and modern humans would hate to hear was on the loose is the tiger. Without having to go back in time, even today, tigers are apex predators that have been known to exhibit cannibalistic behavior towards humans. While tigers typically avoid humans, some become man-eaters due to injury, old age, or habitat loss. When unable to hunt their usual prey, they are known to attack people as an easier food source. A good example of this is the Sundarbans tiger in India and Bangladesh, which are notorious for preying on humans, possibly due to their salty water environment affecting their diet. Famous cases of tiger attacks include the Champawat tiger, which killed over 400 people before being hunted down in 1907. It's so bad that some evidence suggests that once a tiger tastes human flesh, it may seek it again. And all this is the chaos they cause today. So what do you think they were capable of when we rewind time and talk about a tiger species that was 10 to 15% bigger than what we have today? They were the Caspian tigers. The Caspian tiger, scientifically called Panthera tigris virgata, was once a formidable predator that roamed the vast terrain surrounding the Caspian Sea, extending through the Caucasus, Central Asia, and into regions of modern-day Turkey, Iran, and Western China. This majestic feline, now extinct, was among the largest of its kind, with males reaching lengths of up to 10 feet or 3 meters and weighing between 240 to 300 kilograms or 530 to 660 pounds. Its robust physique and striking striped coat made it a symbol of power and beauty in the wild landscapes it inhabited. The relationship between humans and the Caspian tiger was complex and, at times, confrontational, so much so that historical records suggest that Neanderthals, who occupied parts of the Caspian tiger's range, likely encountered these stealthy predators. But unlike the more social cave lions, tigers are solitary hunters, known for their stealth and occasional predation on humans. For solitary Neanderthals, the presence of such a formidable predator would have posed significant challenges, meaning that every individual had to be on constant vigilance. There's even a possibility that this monster was so dangerous that it perhaps influenced their migratory and settlement patterns. There were also European jaguars and leopards. Lurking in prehistoric Europe's dense forests and rocky outcrops was a shadowy, elusive predator, the European leopard, scientifically called the Panthera pardaspalea. Comparable in size to modern leopards, these formidable felines stalked the same terrain as our ancient relatives, competing for food and survival. Fossils dating back 32,000 to 26,000 years ago place them right alongside Neanderthals, and at sites like Grotte des Bays in Belgium, their remains have been found alongside Neanderthal artifacts, suggesting the two might have had some deadly encounters. But before leopards ruled the forests, there was an even more imposing predator, the European jaguar, Panthera gombasiogensis. This beast, roaming Europe 1.5 million to 700,000 years ago, was larger than its modern relatives, with some males tipping the scales at 130 kilograms or 286 pounds. These jaguars were built for power, preying on large mammals and thriving in dense forests. First discovered in 1938 in Gombasek Cave, Slovakia, their fossils have since turned up in Italy, England, Germany, Spain, France, and the Netherlands. Just imagine a world where Neanderthals, European leopards, and ancient jaguars coexisted. A predator's battlefield where survival meant outsmarting both prey and competition. While direct evidence of Neanderthals clashing with these big cats remains scarce, one thing is certain: the prehistoric landscape was anything but peaceful. These carnivores vied for dominance against other fearsome predators like the European cave lion and scimitar-toothed cat, creating a cutthroat ecosystem where only the strongest survived. But the felines weren't the only stars of this ecosystem, because wherever there is a cat, there is also definitely a dog. Quick pause: if you're enjoying this journey through the prehistoric world, give that like button a tap and hit subscribe. Over 97% of people watching haven't subscribed yet, and honestly, imagine what we could create together if even a few more joined the tribe. So go on, hit subscribe, we're just getting started. When it comes to prehistoric canids, two species that stand out were the wolves and cave hyenas, each playing a unique role in the Neanderthal story. See, Neanderthals and wolves shared the same territories, often stalking the same prey. It was an uneasy relationship, forged in conflict, but laced with possibility. In fact, archaeological evidence suggests that Neanderthals frequently sustained injuries from large predators, with wolves accounting for 17% of these wounds. These encounters may have stemmed from territorial disputes or struggles over carcasses left on the frozen plains. Yet, despite their competitive interactions, some researchers believe an unspoken understanding may have developed between the two species. Wolves, with their keen senses and cooperative hunting strategies, may have shadowed Neanderthal groups, scavenging their leftovers, and in return, their presence might have provided Neanderthals with an unexpected advantage, an early warning system against other threats. This relationship, while not one of domestication, could have been an early step towards the eventual bond between humans and canines. However, definitive evidence of true cooperation between Neanderthals and wolves remains elusive, leaving researchers to piece together the nature of their interactions from fragments of time. But wolves were not the only predators that shaped Neanderthal existence. A far more menacing competitor lurked in the darkness of the caves: the cave hyena. Larger and more robust than its modern African relative, the cave hyena was a dominant force, standing 3 feet or 1 meter tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 210 pounds or 95 kilograms. It was both a hunter and a scavenger, targeting the same large herbivores that Neanderthals depended upon for survival. Now here's the thing: the rivalry between Neanderthals and cave hyenas extended beyond the hunt. Both species sought shelter in the same caves, leading to alternating occupations over generations. And although that is scary, fossil records reveal a grim reality. Cave hyenas scavenged Neanderthal remains, and we know this because their bones bear unmistakable gnaw marks. But the relationship was not one-sided. Neanderthals, too, butchered and likely consumed hyenas, marking a brutal cycle of predator and prey. This competition was relentless. Every hunt, every shelter, every resource was a battlefield. Cave hyenas moved in packs, overwhelming prey with sheer numbers and ferocity. Neanderthals, in contrast, relied on intelligence, strategy, and their advanced tool-making abilities. To survive, they had to anticipate the movements of their competitors, adapt to shifting conditions, and carve out a place in a world where every moment was a fight for dominance. Now we've established what the predators were, it's time to look at the prey, and in some ways, these animals were a bit more interesting. In the diverse ecosystems of Pleistocene Europe, Neanderthals coexisted with various cervid species, notably reindeer, scientifically called Rangifer terandus, and several types of deer. Reindeer were particularly abundant in colder periods, migrating across vast distances. Because of this, Neanderthals adeptly timed their movements to intercept these migrations, employing sophisticated hunting strategies. We know this because chemical analysis of reindeer teeth from sites like Jonzac, France, reveal insights into these patterns, suggesting that Neanderthals planned their hunts based on reindeer migratory behavior. In addition to reindeer, Neanderthals hunted other deer species, such as the now extinct giant deer and fallow deer. Evidence from Neumark, Germany, indicates that Neanderthals used close-range thrusting spears to hunt fallow deer, as demonstrated by lesions on 120,000-year-old deer bones. This method required coordinated group efforts and intimate knowledge of prey behavior. Beyond subsistence, interactions with these animals seems to have also had cultural significance. Scientists pieced this together because of a 51,000-year-old engraved giant deer bone discovered in Germany that suggests that Neanderthals engaged in symbolic or artistic practices, indicating a cognitive complexity previously underestimated. But deers were just the tip of the iceberg when it came to herbivores. In the expansive terrains of Pleistocene Europe and Asia, Neanderthals coexisted with the formidable Irish elk, scientifically called Megaloceros giganteus. Strangely, despite its name, the Irish elk was not exclusive to Ireland. Its range extended across much of Eurasia. This majestic cervid stood approximately 2 meters or 6'5" tall at the shoulder and boasted the largest antlers of any known deer species, spanning up to 3.7 meters or 12 feet from tip to tip and weighing around 40 kilograms or 88 pounds. These expansive palmate antlers look a lot like those of modern moose, but significantly larger. It is believed they were likely used for combat during mating seasons and as displays to establish dominance. Like with most species, the relationship between Neanderthals and Irish elk was multifaceted. Archaeological evidence from Middle Paleolithic sites, such as Bolomor Cave in Spain and Denadale Cave in Italy, indicates that Neanderthals hunted and butchered these massive deer. Cut marks on Irish elk bones from these sites, dating back approximately 180,000 to 44,000 years, reveal that Neanderthals employed stone tools to process the carcasses for meat, hide, and possibly antlers. But here's the thing, the sheer size and strength of the Irish elk made hunting them a formidable challenge. Even modern moose, which are smaller than the Irish elk, are known to be dangerous and can be aggressive when threatened. Given this, it's plausible that Neanderthals faced significant risks during hunts, potentially leading to injuries or fatalities. But it was worth it because a successful hunt would have provided substantial resources, including large quantities of meat and hides suitable for clothing or shelter. Beyond subsistence, the impressive antlers of the Irish elk may have held symbolic significance for Neanderthals. While direct evidence of such symbolism is limited, the rarity of Irish elk depictions in Upper Paleolithic art suggests that these animals occupied a unique place in the cognitive and cultural landscapes of early humans. Another animal that seems to have achieved this unique level of importance is the woolly mammoth. Famous for its adaptation into major pop culture movies, Neanderthals shared their habitats with two colossal proboscideans, the woolly mammoth, Mammothus primigenius, and the straight-tusked elephant, Palaeoloxodon antiquus. These majestic creatures not only dominated the landscape, but also played pivotal roles in the survival and cultural practices of Neanderthal communities. See the woolly mammoth, with its iconic, long, curved tusks and dense, shaggy fur, was well adapted to the frigid climates of Ice Age Europe and Asia. Standing approximately 3 meters or 10 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 6 tons, these herbivores roamed the Mammoth Steppe, a vast, cold and dry region. Neanderthals, equipped with sophisticated hunting strategies and tools, targeted these massive beasts for their meat, hides and bones. For them, the successful hunt of a mammoth would have provided a substantial food source and raw materials for tools and shelter for the whole colony. They were in many ways the ultimate prize. On the other hand though, the straight-tusked elephant inhabited the more temperate forests and grasslands of Europe and Western Asia between 800,000 and 100,000 years ago. Towering over 4 meters or 13 feet tall and weighing up to 13 tons, these elephants were among the largest land mammals of their time, surpassing even the woolly mammoth in size. Recent archaeological findings, particularly from the Neumark Nord site in Germany, have shed light on the interactions between Neanderthals and straight-tusked elephants. Analysis of 125,000-year-old bones from this site reveals that, like many before it, the Neanderthals systematically hunted and butchered these giants. Scientists even discovered the remains of over 70 individual elephants, predominantly adult males, exhibiting cut marks and other signs of systematic butchering, indicating that hunting these enormous animals was a regular part of Neanderthal subsistence strategies. The successful hunt of such large prey doesn't just provide food for the colony, but also suggests that Neanderthals possessed advanced hunting techniques and social cooperation. They essentially weighed the risk and gain and chose to run head-on against the largest mammal on the land with nothing more efficient than a wooden stick. Their hunts, however, would have been worth it after all. The sheer amount of resources obtained from a single elephant could sustain a community for an extended period, providing not only meat, but also hides for clothing and shelter and bones for tool making. Now, if you thought this was impressive, wait until you hear about the woolly rhino. The formidable woolly rhinoceros, Coelodonta antiquitatis, were massive herbivores, measuring up to 4.6 meters or 15 feet in length and standing 1.9 meters or 6'3" tall at the shoulder. These massive beasts, unlike their modern counterparts, were well adapted to the harsh, cold environments of Europe and Northern Asia. Their thick, shaggy coats and pronounced front horns made them both a challenge and a prize for prehistoric hunters. But as we've seen from the past, to the Neanderthals, size was only an illusion. But something fascinating about these creatures is the fact that evidence from their significance in the lives of early humans is vividly depicted in ancient cave art. One of the most remarkable sites that shows this is the Chauvet-Pont d'Arc cave in Vallon-Pont-d'Arc, France. Discovered in 1994, this cave houses some of the oldest known figurative drawings, dating back approximately 34,000 to 32,000 years. Among these artworks are detailed portrayals of woolly rhinoceroses, showcasing the animal's distinctive features and offering insights into the interactions between Neanderthals and these majestic creatures. Another significant site is the Ruffignac cave in the Dordogne region of France, known as the Cave of the 100 Mammoths. Its walls are adorned with enormous depictions of Ice Age fauna, including woolly rhinoceroses. The art here, primarily engravings and black-line drawings, dates back around 13,000 years and provides a window into the rich biodiversity of the era and the artistic expression of its human inhabitants. Okay, now let's switch gears a bit and talk about an animal that both the Neanderthals and Homo sapiens got to live with. In the rugged landscapes of Pleistocene Europe, Neanderthals coexisted with formidable bovine creatures, notably the aurochs or Bos primigenius. These wild ancestors of modern domestic cattle were imposing, with bulls standing up to 1.8 meters or 5.9 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing around 1,000 kilograms or 2,200 pounds. As you would expect, their impressive size and strength made them both a challenging prey and a vital resource for Neanderthal communities. Archaeological evidence indicates that Neanderthals actively hunted aurochs, as well as other large bovids like the steppe bison, also known as the bison priscus. Today, sites across Europe have yielded remains of these animals bearing cut marks and signs of systematic butchering, suggesting that Neanderthals employed coordinated group hunting strategies to take down such formidable prey. But here's something unique about these creatures. The relationship between Neanderthals and these large bovids was not merely one of predator and prey. The presence of aurochs and bison in various habitats influenced Neanderthal mobility and settlement patterns, as these hominids often established campsites in proximity to the migratory routes of their prey. This strategic positioning essentially made efficient hunting and resource utilization much easier, and over time reflected the adaptive ingenuity of Neanderthal groups in the face of Europe's dynamic and often harsh environments. But the craziest part? If we had been more careful, you might have had the chance to see this majestic creature with your own eyes, because the aurochs went extinct in the 17th century, marking the end of a significant chapter in human history. And if you're wondering what sealed its fate, the answer is simple: we did. Sometimes some herbivores are scarier than carnivores, and any Neanderthal who ran into a hippo found that out very quickly. See, the hippopotamuses have always been a real force of nature, and during the Pleistocene, the Neanderthals had to deal with them. Among these monsters, the Hippopotamus antiquus, also known as the European hippo, was a true terror. This monster was larger than today's African hippos, with some estimates putting it at around 3,174 kilograms or 7,000 pounds, and nearly double the size of modern hippos. It had a more elongated skull and higher eye sockets, suggesting it was highly aquatic and likely spent much of its time in rivers and lakes. This species roamed Europe and Western Asia, overlapping with Neanderthal territories, making encounters almost inevitable. But if H. antiquus wasn't bad enough, there was also Hexaprotodon, an even weirder and just as terrifying relative. The name literally means 6 front teeth, and yes, it had 6 massive incisors instead of the usual 4, giving it a bizarre and intimidating look. These hippos lived across Asia and possibly Europe, and their massive jaws reinforced mandibular symphysis and lower-crowned molars, suggesting they were tough, heavy grazing beasts that could bite with incredible force. If modern hippos can crush a crocodile's skull, imagine what a Hexaprotodon could do. Now, hippos today are some of the most aggressive and territorial animals on Earth, killing more people in Africa each year than lions or crocodiles. Their ancient relatives were likely just as bad, if not worse. The overlapping habitats of these hippos and Neanderthals suggest that early humans had to tread carefully around these massive creatures. While we don't have direct evidence that Neanderthals hunted them, it's hard to believe they didn't have some kind of tense encounter. The sheer size, aggression, and unpredictable nature of these hippos meant that any Neanderthal group wandering too close to their territory was in serious danger. In the grand scheme of things, Hippopotamus antiquus and Hexaprotodon were not just big, they were nightmares in the flesh. Whether through competition for watering holes, scavenging kills, or accidental run-ins, these hippos would have been a constant threat in the Pleistocene world, influencing how Neanderthals moved, hunted, and survived. On the flip side, not every animal of the Pleistocene was a giant, supersized monster, and this was thanks to a little something called island dwarfism. See, island dwarfism led to the evolution of smaller-sized animals on islands, a phenomenon observed in several Pleistocene species. For instance, the Mediterranean islands were home to diminutive elephants and hippos. These smaller creatures, while less imposing than their mainland relatives, provided Neanderthals with accessible sources of meat and material. The unique challenges of hunting these agile animals likely honed Neanderthal adaptability and hunting techniques. Contrary to common perceptions, camels were not exclusive to arid deserts. During the Pleistocene, species such as camelops roamed parts of North America. While direct interactions between Neanderthals and camels are not well documented, the presence of these animals in regions accessible to human populations suggests potential encounters. Camels would have been valuable for their meat, hides, and possibly even as pack animals, influencing Neanderthal migratory and hunting patterns. The Pleistocene epoch also witnessed the existence of large otter species, notably in regions like the Mediterranean. These otters, larger than their modern counterparts, inhabited riverine and coastal environments rich in resources. Neanderthals, known for exploiting diverse habitats, likely encountered these formidable aquatic mammals. Hunting or scavenging giant otters would have provided essential nutrients and pelts for warmth, especially in cooler climates. Such interactions underscore the Neanderthals' versatility in adapting to various ecological niches. To cut a long story short, life as a Neanderthal was anything but simple, yet against all odds, they made it work. Thriving for thousands of years in a world where danger lurked around every corner, from massive big cats to hippos that could kill with a single charge. Neanderthals carved out their place in an era where everything was either hunting you or waiting for the chance to try. But what about you? Would you have survived in a world filled with cave lions, giant hyenas, and saber-toothed predators? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to join us on more journeys into the prehistoric past. Until next time, stay curious.